I'm going to go into a little bit of my background about mushrooms. First of all, I grew up with my parents not knowing much about mushrooms, and they told me never to touch mushrooms. The only time you touch a mushroom is with a stick because some of them are poisonous. Um, so throughout my life until the last few years, I never touched a mushroom unless I knew for sure it was like an artist conch. And otherwise, I didn't touch mushrooms. And I taught my kids not to touch mushrooms, and I taught my grandkids not to touch mushrooms. However, I know a lot about plants and a lot about trees and how nature works together, but I knew very little about mushrooms. And I can thank my parents for the knowledge, a lot of the knowledge and the curiosity that I have in nature. But I can also thank them for not teaching me about mushrooms, which I wish they did. But So, in learning more about nature, I knew I had to just start learning about mushrooms. And I have a couple friends that decided that last year they were going to learn more about mushrooms. And so decided, well, I'll join the bandwagon. We can learn together. Um, so, I got myself an app called Seek, which one friend suggested. And and I just set out, and every mushroom I came upon, I identified it, I researched it, I learned a lot about it. After I positively identified it, I went online and learned more. And the more I learned, the more enthused I was. And one question that was asked to me was by a friend, what is the purpose of mushrooms in nature? And honestly, I didn't have the answer to that. So, but it made sense. I mean, I did have the answer. I just didn't think into nature enough to understand what mushrooms were, to link what I already knew. And they help break down nature's debris and feed nature as they break down. So they clean up the world, if you want to call it that. They clean up the woods. Um, so so the more I learned, the more I started testing out the edibles, and I tasted I bet 30, now about 20 species of mushrooms last year, and I just fell right in love with mushroom learning and harvesting and eating and learning all about them. And I can see that I'm just going to continue learning and learning and learning. And there's another reason too. I am an author, and I am working on a trilogy. And in that trilogy, I am talking about this a Native American based, and the foraging and how they survived, and all that is going into book as part of the book, as part of the storyline. And I didn't know hardly anything about mushrooms, so I never touched on them in my book, and they're a valuable part of nature. And knowing that they are beneficial medicinally and nutritional wise, I just wanted to learn even more because that just helps me learn how they were used, and how I can incorporate that knowledge into my books. And so the more I'm learning, the more I'm eating, the more I'm experimenting, the more I'm studying mushrooms. It's just helping me overall, and I can just incorporate that into quote unquote the daily life of a Native American in my fiction book, if that makes any sense.